Ace Attorney is a visual novel series of 6 mainline entries and 5 spin-offs and has become so popular that everybody knows the OBJECTION meme. It's also been referenced in other media as well.
And the only thing I can think of is the school swimsuit. If you tie the swimsuit like a bag and stuff it full of gravel, it'd make an effective weapon.
Gravel inside the swimsuit? Even the Ace Attorney would be astonished by such a fantastic idea!
Maybe for a little bit, I'd like to talk about my own experience with the series. Because this series got me into a ton of other series that I'm in today. Kingdom Hearts, Persona, Danganronpa, all the others that followed suit all because of this game. So, as well as having a personal debt to this game, I actually love it for the game itself. Charming characters, great writing, challenging court cases that really makes you try to think outside the box, and a game that's simple enough for everyone to play. So how about I get in to actually start talking about it. The year was 2000. The concept was conceived by the idea of Capcom having trained their younger staff by letting them work on games. In my opinion, it was that the senior staff didn't want them to work on Zombie Shoot Up and Astro Boy Knockoff. Shu Takumi was a lucky employee and he was given 6 months to create any game he wanted. After getting extension to 10 months due to 6 months being an unreasonable time to develop games and getting some Resident Evil developers to help part-time, he got to make the game he wanted in time. He knew straight away he wanted to make a mystery game where the player had to spot lies in other characters' statements. The first draft of the story had the protagonist convicted of a murder. He was a detective and a dead body was found in his office. After being assigned a useless attorney, he would decide to defend himself in court. This is when Takumi dropped the detective theme as he realized his story had little to do with actual detective work. I agree. Not a donut in sight in this draft. From here on, the setting became the courtroom and the protagonist became a lawyer. Takumi's main inspiration in mystery fiction came from the West, with shows like Perry Mason and Columbo. He even structured the first 2 cases in the style of Columbo, where it shows you who the killer is and the main focus is how the killer gets caught instead of who the actual killer is. As for the setting, Takumi was inspired by Japan's legal system in the 2000s because at the time the conviction rate was at 99.9%. Being a defense lawyer was the hardest job in the country, so Takumi wanted a game where you'd have to root for the underdog, quite literally. The team even took several trips to the courthouse to watch the trial to study. Yes, that is in quotes, by the way, for people who wanted to know. I can just imagine Takumi going up to the Capcom CEO and just asking them to rent a bus for the team to just go to the courthouse. After watching multiple trials, Takumi realized that the civil trials he saw were a lot less interesting than the murder trial he saw, so he decided to disregard reality and make a heavily dramatized courtroom drama. The first game was going to be released on the Game Boy Color, but after getting a view of the Game Boy Advance, they decided to switch to that console instead and came out in 2001. In this game, the protagonist is Phoenix Wright, who is a rookie lawyer. His best friend is accused of murdering their love interest. You're made to defend him with your mentor Mia Fey, who's definitely caused a few sexual awakenings from her 2 mentors, if you know what I mean. After you save Larry because your prosecutor's a moron, Mia invites you out to dinner but dies the next day, and your second case is to solve her murder. Mia had also invited her sister Maya to dinner as she wanted her to hold on to evidence for the upcoming trial. Maya is accused of murder because her name's written on a piece of paper in blood, but you take up the case and end up saving her and exposing a shady business in the process. After this case, Maya becomes your assistant to show you her gratitude. She's a spirit medium, so she can bring forth Mia and her men whenever the duo needs help. After this, you solve a murder at the movie set, and then the stage is set for the climax. Your main opponent for this game is a prosecutor named Edgeworth, but now he's a defendant and you need to defend him. The new prosecutor is Edgeworth's former mentor, who has a perfect win record just like the student he trained. As the case goes on, you learn more about Edgeworth's backstory, including his relationship with Phoenix and Larry, the loss of Edgeworth's father at a young age. It's always the dads. And you also learn a lot about other characters. Stuff like why Phoenix became a lawyer, Maya's struggle being a spirit medium with a 30% success rate, and all the main characters making the perfect finale. You save Edgeworth, have a tearful goodbye with Maya as she goes back to her hometown to become a better spirit medium, and Phoenix continues his quest to become a lawyer. Before moving on to the second game, it's time to discuss gameplay. The game is split into 2 parts. Half is investigating. You go to each of the areas to look for what you need. Most fans call this boring, but if you're a true Chad like myself, you know that this is where the part of the game where most of the comedy and characters shine the brightness. This is what I think is a good balance between fluff dialogue, provided you look for it, and story-related dialogue. The other half is the trial, where the witnesses come up to the stand and you have to prove their lies in the statement using evidence you got during the investigation. This is where the real meat and potatoes of the game are. The further you are in the game, the harder contradictions get, making this a real progression of the player's skills. After the release of this game, Takumi took a long vacation. When he returned, he was immediately asked to start writing the script for the game's sequel. Takumi was tasked with writing 5 episodes in 3.5 months. He wanted to make this game longer than the first, and an episode from the previous game would have taken him a month to write each. Now he had 5 episodes to do in 3.5 months, so there was only one thing to do. Consume more coffee than a college senior and cram. This paid off though, because he managed to write 1,500 pages of dialogue in the time frame. If you're wondering how he hit this deadline, he needed to have a scenario for each case followed up in a week, so he did it the best way he knew how. Getting wasted. Takumi often drank alcohol when writing for the Justice for All script. Explains so much. And then a higher up called him to his office. Shoot, amazing work, seriously, but we want you to add a new gameplay mechanic. Surprisingly, this wasn't hard for Takumi. He had thought of the new mechanic on the spot. Psyche locks. He described it as simple enough for his mother to play. Also, mad respect to his mother, by the way. My mother couldn't get past the first testimony. No, not the first case. The first testimony. But that was the easy part. Implementing it was much harder. He wanted it to be a way for this player to see through a character's lies during an investigation, but he was having trouble visualizing how it would work. While he worked on that, there were even more problems in the way of development. First was cartridge space. Takumi wanted the game to be 5 cases long, but they had to fit 5 emotionally packed, gripping cases into something the size of a USB. This led to one of the 5 cases Takumi wanted to include unfortunately being scrapped, but not permanently as it got reworked into the 3rd game. Even then, Takumi's next problem was even more revisions to his script. Judging from popularity polls from the first game, Edgeworth became the fan favourite. In the original script, Edgeworth would return as a prosecutor, but if he was a fan favourite, and in canon, legendary prosecutor, it felt wrong to have him lose to Phoenix over and over again. This inspired Takumi to create a new antagonist, Franziska von Karma, a prodigy prosecutor who has been undefeated since she was 13, and the daughter of Manfred von Karma, Edgeworth's old mentor. I wonder where she gets her perfectionism from. It gets funnier when she shows a hissy fit every time she loses.
Wanna bet?
Despite all the problems, the game was eventually released to the world. The story of this game starts about a year after the first game, and we see the killer hit Mr. Wright on the head with a fire hydrant so he loses his memory, hence why you're given a tutorial. If you haven't played the first game, why would you play this game though? You slowly start to unravel the details of the case. As well as that, you start to get your memories back, and with the help of Maya who returns, Case 2 starts. Case 2 takes place before Case 1, and it takes place in Maya's hometown. You need to defend Maya as she's once again the prime suspect. Case 3. Look, it's the least favorite in the series for a reason. You go to a circus and a murder happens. What more do I need to say about this? Case 4 is you're invited to a live-action hero show after your work in the last game, but bizarre twist, yes, someone is killed, and Maya is also kidnapped and will be released if you get the defendant and not guilty. As well as the main cases, there are also subplots in this game. You meet Maya's little cousin Pearl and get to know her. She's your companion for cases 2 and 4, as well as that the stories also focus on Miles Edgeworth's sudden disappearance and why Franziska is here now. This game implies that he's dead, and Phoenix is slowly opening up about what happened to Edgeworth, and we learn that Franziska is here for revenge on what happened to her father. Personally, I don't hate this story, but it's my least favorite of the original trilogy. You know, now that I'm here writing the script, it may be the 3.5 months he had to write the game. The gameplay is more or less a copy-paste of the previous game, but there's one new mechanic, the Psyche Locks that I mentioned earlier. The Psyche Locks happen in Case 2. Maya's cousin Pearl gives you Maya's Magatama. Since it's an item of spiritual power, since they are spirit mediums, it can help you detect when others are lying. You can use the evidence you've collected so far to disprove what they're saying. The catch is, 90% of the time you won't have the evidence at hand ready the moment you see them lie, so you have to go investigate more and come back later. With this, a 3rd game in the series was greenlit. So gameplay for this game is essentially the same, but I'm not complaining because this is a case of not fixing what isn't broken. As well as that, keep in mind this is a GBA visual novel. Nobody's expecting, Kingdom Hearts 2 level gameplay from this game. Hell, we weren't even expecting Chain of Memories gameplay. So I'll move on to the story, but I got a ton of development while writing the script, so we're roping development and story into one. There will be spoilers, but look on screen. If you want to stay blind for specific cases, I will give a warning when I hit that part of the story. Okay, we've started spoilers for case 1. When developing the story for this game, Takumi seen concept art for a young Winston Payne and realized he could use this as a reason to explain why he doesn't have hair in the 2 games before that. Since Turnabout Memories is a prequel case, he decided to do it as a breakdown animation. If you don't know what a breakdown animation is for not being a fan, it's a longer style animation for when a killer gets caught. While it was a good animation, the team found it hard to naturally rope into a case because it took away here's the real spoiler, because it took attention away from case villain Dahlia Hawthorne. She had lost the spotlight to Winston Payne, and this led to her return in the final 2 cases, Turnabout Beginnings and Bridge to the Turnabout. It was also due to cartridge space. Due to cartridge space, they had to have characters return, which led the team to be more creative when making Dahlia Hawthorne. Okay, spoiler for case 2. The second case was inspired by a Japanese story where a crime is committed but perfectly foiled by one slip of the tongue. In this game, you prove that the killer is not a thief but a killer because they slip up one time in their testimony, although Takumi feels like he could have made this case a better example of the source material. Case 3, Recipe for Turnabout, spoilers by the way, was actually planned to be in Justice for All, as the scrapped case I brought up earlier. You can see one dove in Vitamin Square, which is a dove in a field of pigeons, implying an escape from Max Galactica from case 3. The story for this case is that Takumi saw Phoenix Wright as a hero story, so he wanted him to face all the superhero cliches, so made Phoenix face an evil imposter, but made it very Ace Attorney-esque in making him only vaguely look like Phoenix. Here's a comparison between Phoenix and his imposter, Furio Tigre. Spoilers for Turnabout Beginnings. While making Turnabout Beginnings, Takumi pondered about making this the first case as to not confuse players by telling the story out of order. Sorry, I had a cough. In addition to that, he considers the case 1 to be the most important part of an Ace Attorney game. While I not fully agree, me thinking the final case is more important, I can see where he's coming from. It needs to leave an impact. What's more impactful start than defending a death row inmate against a young Miles Edgeworth as we go back to the past? Yet he said it was making this case 4, as he felt the cases being out of order helped the story, especially since this is where Dahlia Hawthorne is given her spotlight. Okay, spoilers for Bridge to the Turnabout. Takumi's original idea for this case would have Shelly the Killer, the kidnapper from the final case of Justice for All, attempt an assassination in a fancy hotel with the twist that he was being dead for 17 years and was being channeled by Misty Faye, Maya's mother, which, as you can tell by anyone who played the game, is drastically changed. The final case we got was about a temple we've been hearing whispers about throughout the game, but never extending to more than a place that exists in the world of Ace Attorney. It's now the crime scene. As well as that, Dahlia Hawthorne is fully punished, but what was hard for Takumi to write. He knew what he wanted Dahlia Hawthorne's downfall to be, but there was a fatal flaw in the original case that he couldn't fix. Time was running out with his original investigation Day 1 and Day 1 trial had to be fixed. He couldn't figure out how to bring his Day 1 parts and Day 2 parts together, especially the hints of foreshadowing he put into Day 1. 3 days before work was scheduled to begin on the second half of the case, he still had nothing. He knew how he wanted to corner Dahlia, but had no way to connect it to Day 1. This is when he used his own character's saying to fix his own story. Instead of thinking, how can he fit his characters into the story, he figured he should make his storyline follow the characters and show what the team deems important. This led to the impactful reveal we got, but you're gonna have to play the game if you want to find out what happened. I ain't telling you shit. Now we enter the 2004 to 2006 era. The DS has come out worldwide, and up until then, Ace Attorney had been a Japan-only game, but when the DS came out in When the DS came out, the team decided to remake the games on the DS, not wanting to make a 4th game and mess with the well-constructed trilogy they made. They even added a 5th case to the DS remake to show off what Ace Attorney could do on the DS. They added touchscreen controls, forensic science minigames using said touchscreen, microphone functionality, as well as being able to examine your evidence in 3D to allow more clues to be found in the evidence. This led to more fun investigations and even bridged the gap between the second and first game, like Chain of Memories to Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2. If I keep saying how important Chain of Memories is, you guys will eventually acknowledge it. The most important thing about the DS remakes is this is when the game finally came to the West. While I can never find out why exactly they were brought to the West with the DS instead of the GBA, I'm gonna assume it's because of the skyrocket of DS sales. Literally everybody had one. Even my at the time 34, 35-year-old dad had one, and the only games he knew how to play and still only know how to play are Brain Age and Mario Kart. I just realized the fact I ever got Sonic 2 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles, and those being my introductions to video games, is nothing short of a miracle. As much as Takumi wanted to avoid making a fourth game in the series, it wasn't that easy. The fourth game in the series goes by the name Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. Originally, Shu Takumi felt the series should end with Trials and Tribulations, feeling that was the perfect end for Phoenix's character. Damn, this cough is really bad today. Capcom said, don't care, didn't ask, make Ace Attorney 4. We decided to make a new protagonist. Then the meeting came. So, we've ended Phoenix's story, and we feel like we should make a new protagonist, Apollo Justice. We have the design which works well, and we have an idea for the story. Put Phoenix in the game. When realizing they needed a new protagonist, Takumi had trouble thinking who it should be. At first he thought of using the Judge since he was a popular character, but the team felt a younger character would fit their game better. Next was his clothes. With many colour variations drawn, and the team unanimously voted for red. Next was his personality, which Takumi found challenging, saying, "The most natural parts of me were already used up by the character Phoenix Wright, so I had to try and make everything about Phoenix and turn him upside down. With this great turnabout, I came up with Apollo, a character who is aggressive, passionate, and youthful." The same principle was given to designing Trucy Wright, the new assistant character. She was designed to be the opposite of Maya, so she was originally written to be a ninja girl in training, but this was rejected and she was made to a magician in his training instead. Next thing they had to decide was, what was Apollo's special ability to match Phoenix's psyche locks? The answer? Perceiving. Apollo's bracelet lets Apollo hone in on a witness when they're telling lies. Originally it was going to be a 3D reconstruction of the witness's face, seeing monetary value of testimony and evidence, and the perceive we finally got, but in full colour, when in the final game it's black and white. Now for what is the most insane development story ever, and it's about the soundtrack. Composer for Prosecutor Gavin's theme tells us he had a dream where they were waiting for a bus ride and a woman who was Prosecutor Gavin's type asked to write the song, having heard the composer's struggles. Then a waiter brought over a computer and music writing software. Yeah, keep in mind guys, this was a dream. And the J-pop theme had suddenly become a hard rock theme. When he woke up, he instantly started to write as much of the song as he could remember. The story starts when Apollo Justice becomes a lawyer. Up until then, he was an employee of defense attorney Christoph Gavin, but one day a defendant asked Apollo to be his lawyer. So fast forward to the trial when we're the defendant is Phoenix. Whew, he really let himself go. Fun fact for non-fans, the fandom has dubbed this iteration Hobo Phoenix. You are welcome. After declaring him innocent, Phoenix offers him a job. Despite not wanting it, you get sucker punched into doing 3 cases, as technically Phoenix's employee, and then your spotlight gets stolen. So I hear you all asking, how does this game play? Yes, you're all asking me. I can hear you guys talking through the screen. While at its core, it's the same trilogy. You investigate cases, use the evidence you find in court to solve murder cases, but how you go about getting this evidence is new. Emma Sky from the bonus case on the DS returns, giving you a story reason to include forensic science minigames like fingerprint dusting, shoe print analyzing, x-ray vision, stuff like that. Trials mainly stay the same way, but sometimes you get to analyze witnesses' reactions with use of your bracelet. This shows a witness either knows more when they're letting on, or just flat out lying depending on the person. Fans really seem receptive to this new game and new trilogy, with Famitsu giving it a 36 out of 40, and it sold 250,000 copies in its first retail week. Take this W, Apollo. You deserve it. It is now 2008. Everything's going well for Ace Attorney, but that is when everything changed.
In writing the story, I provide everything, and in turn, take everything away. I give each person a story, and weave their intertwining webs of fate. However, it would appear that interlopers have found their way into the story.
2010, the Japanese company Level 5 showed 5 upcoming games coming to the Nintendo 3DS. One of them was a crossover nobody saw coming. After the trailer, President of Level 5 said, "I didn't think I'd be given the okay to make this game. I wonder if it's okay if Shu Takumi doesn't make Ace Attorney 5. It was meant as a passing joke, but it eventually became reality. Akihiro Hino, the president of Level 5, made their own game inspired by Ace Attorney called Professor Layton and the Curious Village. It's about a professor of archaeology and his assistant, Luke, who venture to a strange village who needs to solve puzzles to unravel the mysteries. Ace Attorney was the main inspiration for the puzzles, and Hino had hoped to do a crossover with Shu Takumi. In 2009, he visited Capcom and invited the developers out for lunch. This is when he asked Shu Takumi himself if his idea would sound good, but all Takumi says, "That sounds hard to do at this time." Hino kept moving forward with this project despite being shut down. The project was greenlit, but Takumi wasn't on board because he was developing his own game called Ghost Trick. But as development was wrapping up on Ghost Trick, his interest kept growing. Hino kept insisting it wouldn't be a true Ace Attorney game without Shu Takumi. Eventually, he became a writer and co-director. Ace Attorney was left in the hands of Motohide Ishiro. He was the producer of the original Trilogy, and while the DS remake of Trials and Tribulations was being worked on, he proposed the idea of a spin-off series. They decided since this was a spin-off, they should focus on crime scenes and investigations instead of the courtroom. Their main challenge being deciding a main character and conveying the find the contradiction gameplay without going to the courtroom. The main character was originally going to be popular character Emma Sky, but went with Edgeworth since he was the #1 fan favourite. The team grew larger, recruiting key partners in the Apollo Justice development team, like character designer who designed all the new characters. Out deciding what crime scenes to cut, seemingly a parking lot and airport crime scenes, most likely for turnabout kidnapping and airlines respectively, the game was finished. This game is also told out of order. I don't know if there's a reason for this like in Trials and Tribulations, but a body is discovered in Edgeworth's office. Edgeworth meets up with series veteran Dick Gumshoe, who gets his name for wanting to lick the gum off Edgeworth's shoes. Yeah, that sounds about right. And then we go on a journey where we meet our new Maya, and honestly we just solve the murders we run into. This game is very different from other Ace Attorney games. You physically walk around the crime scenes to try and find evidence you're going to use up against the witnesses. You also physically walk up to them to start talking to them. That isn't it though. Edgeworth has his own special ability. Throughout an investigation, he will gain logical ideas you need to connect that don't make sense. For example, this basketball hoop and a similar shaped indentation in the carpet both being in the same hallway. The new character Kay Faraday is a great thief, and she has a machine that creates holographs of her escape routes, but since she can plug in whatever information she wants, she uses it to recreate crime scenes Edgeworth needs to investigate. You can use this recreation of the crime scene to test against witness testimonies. This game was the second best-selling DS game in Japan after Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. Roxas fans, we keep winning! In the West, critics gave its scores around 8.5 in the area, with Nintendo World Report saying it was one of the best entries keeping the formula the same but with a fresh new twist, and this led to an eventual sequel. After finishing Investigations 1, Motohide Ishiro offered his services to Capcom to make another Ace Attorney game. Since Investigations 1 was received so positively, he was given the go-ahead. The developers went to a training camp in 2009 shortly after the first game's release, and development went smoothly up to the 2011 release. While this game was going smoothly, Professor Layton vs. Ace Attorney was not. There were many development problems. Akihiro Hino wanted this to be a true Shu Takumi game, but this was a collaborative effort, so everything he wanted to include had to pass through other directors that were in 3 different cities, and was left up to majority vote. The first draft of the climax actually came from an external writer, and the idea for the storyteller and important character came from a level 5 employee instead of Takumi. This led to all the writers wanting to separate and do their own thing.
We have the candy fish swimming in the fish tank, then it breaks out and plays basketball. Like, duh.
2 Dr. Seuss spinning masks. We toss candy into their mouths and...
Insane! Flashing lights and fireworks! Chef wants to be dazzled!
You guys, they're all good ideas and...
Overruled. Fish tank.
Hello! The only way we are winning is with the spinning heads, and lots of them!
You people are impossible! I'm so out of here!
Well, so am I.
Fine!
We can't storm off together. Kinda defeats the purpose.
You go back that way then.
No, you go back that way.
Well, I came this way first.
we are in some deep trouble.
OMGINO! Want me to get them?
Not so much.
This troubled development led to Ace Attorney Investigations 2 being used to fill the space between Investigations 1 and the new Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright crossover. For some reason, this game ended up being Japan only. In a live Q&A in 2012, the following year, Motohide said he hasn't given up trying to bring the game over to the West and discussions are currently taking place. Unfortunately, nothing came from that. Later in 2012, when Ace Attorney 5 was announced, he was asked if high sales of the 3DS port of the original Trilogy and Ace Attorney 5 would lead to a localization of the second game. He answered, "The game isn't being held hostage, so don't read it as this, but it definitely couldn't hurt." After the pain of waiting, fans localized the game themselves. The story of Investigations 2 is the group getting back together after some time apart, and this time you're not randomly running into murders. There's actually a cohesive story going along. In this game you meet Uncle Ray. No, not Edruff's actual uncle. He was Edruff's father's assistant back when he was still alive. He meets Edruff through his own sort of character arc, since Edruff is unsure if he should quit or still be a prosecutor due to a group called the PIC having a problem with how Edruff practices prosecution. The gameplay of this stayed the same as the previous game except for one new mechanic, logic chess. While investigating some witnesses, you'll start a logical debate and try to slowly wring information out of them, and I don't like this gameplay personally. It seems to me difficult to tell what the right option is to advance the dialogue. By now you're probably wondering how the crossover is going. Well, by 2011 they were still nowhere near young. They still weren't anywhere near young by the time they were finished. By 2011 they were nowhere near done and didn't get finished until 2013. While there are many ups and downs during the DLC episodes, which are meta stories where the characters talk about the development process, there's no way you couldn't say this game was challenging, as I had discussed prior till now. The game story is where Phoenix and Maya are on their way to London as part of the Legal League of Attorneys exchange. This is where lawyers examine legal systems from other countries, and while they're there, they meet a girl called Espella, who they need to defend. When they win the case, they see Espella's book, and when they open it, they're teleported to a land called Labyrinthia, a medieval village. Phoenix and Maya lose their memories and assume the role of bakers. This is where they meet Professor Layton and Luke. Espella asks them to defend her in another trial. This is when they learn that there are witch trials in Labyrinthia, and that's what she's up against. Phoenix and Maya start to get their memories back, and after some help from the Professor and Luke to defend Espella, they work together to unravel the mystery of Labyrinthia itself. The main town exploration and puzzle solving is pretty standard to Professor Layton fans. Meanwhile, the gameplay for the trials is very different to Ace Attorney fans. Disregarding the previous 4 games, you take on a new gameplay mechanic. You now examine multiple witnesses at the same time instead of one by one. This leads to new gameplay styles like needing to press the witnesses and then listen out for other witnesses' reactions to see if it matches up with their story of events. You can also compare witness testimonies to other witnesses' testimonies to see if contradictions arise. With the crossover finished, Takumi was finally ready to return to mainline Ace Attorney. Unfortunately, he was in for a rude awakening when he got back to Capcom. Capcom was getting feedback from fans saying despite liking the spin-offs, they were getting very tired and waiting for Ace Attorney 5 after being 4 years since Apollo Justice. The investigation team had made the executive decision to take over for Takumi and begin work without him. The team of beginners were now making the next mainline game. The producer, Motohide Ashiro, gave them guidelines saying to not follow the plot threads Takumi had set up. He also told them that they should bring back Phoenix instead of Apollo. Tell that to Case 4 and 5! Since they were making their own thing, this game had no appearance from Maya Fey, a definite fan favourite. The new assistant, Athena Sykes, was introduced and made a playable character, taking the role of the rookie attorney Phoenix and Apollo had already gotten through. Athena Sykes is a new rookie that Phoenix hired in Europe. In addition to that, they brought back characters like Maya's cousin Pearl, Phoenix's love interest, Tracy Wright, and referencing familiar characters. This game follows Phoenix Wright returning to the legal world, mentoring Athena and helping Apollo gain his footing as a lawyer. In a case where Apollo's best friend becomes a victim, he takes a leave of absence and leaves the office in a split state, as well as Japanophobia being in an age called the Dark Age of the Law. Dual Destinies is the Crash Bandicoot 4 of Ace Attorney, classic gameplay with a modern day twist. The characters went from being 2D sprites to 3D models. The team struggles very hard, making it feel like part of the art style's appeal came from the 2D. Therefore, they feel like they couldn't achieve the same thing if it went into 3D, and the team went through many redesigns before getting what we got in the game. Investigations are made more interesting since now you can examine the room from different angles instead of the one angle from before. In addition to that, Psyche locks return when you play as Phoenix, Perceive when you play as Apollo, and it went from being a trial minigame to an investigation minigame. Speaking of minigames, Athena brings her own gameplay mechanic, the Mood Matrix. Athena has super sensitive hearing, so sensitive that she can hear the emotion in people's voices. With her necklace widget, she can analyze people's emotions and detect what they are feeling. Your job is to pick the emotion that is out of place. like feeling happy when rubble's falling upon you. Hey, this channel's a judgment-free zone. This game was received well as the next mainline game, and the best part, Apollo became the most popular character thanks to this game. Woo woo woo! Sorry, okay. Back to the video. After the team's work on Dual Destinies, Jeremy developed the next game, Spirits of Justice. The problem was Yamazaki, previous head developer, wanted to stop making Ace Attorney games. Keep in mind, he developed the investigation duology, Dual Destinies, in short succession to each other. It made sense he wanted to stop and broaden his horizons. But he was brought to events like San Diego Comic-Con, and after seeing enthusiasm from fans, he decided he would make the next game. The team felt that nobody was a match for Phoenix anymore, so they gave him an Eskimo burial. The new legal system gave a new sense of urgency that the other games didn't have. It also gave Apollo a chance to wear his big boy pants and show he could run the office while Phoenix was away. While the 3D models were worked on from constructive criticisms from fans, the rest of the team worked on story and needed a reason for why they sent Phoenix away on his airplane-shaped ice floe, and remembered their red-headed stepchild named Maya and used that as their plot device. In all seriousness though, not counting the Layton crossover, it's been 4 games since she came back, so I'm glad Maya's back. The story is that Phoenix is called for Maya while she's in the kingdom of Kurain. When the call is cut short on Phoenix's end, he cancels everything to go see if she's okay.
Maya, hey! Answer me! Hey, Apollo. I'm gonna step out for a bit.
Huh? Okay, but where to?
To the kingdom of Kurain.
What?
When Phoenix gets there, he learns that the judicial system is corrupt when an innocent boy is put on trial without a lawyer to defend him. Meanwhile, Apollo and Athena are managing the law office back home until Apollo needs to go to Kurain for himself for reasons. Since Phoenix is Kurain, there's a new gameplay mechanic added to the trials over there, the Divination Seance. Since it's a kingdom full of spirit mediums, they have the power to talk to the deceased and see their final moments. New character, Princess Rafa, uses the final moments to create her insights. This is where you can use the Divination Seance to disprove statements like you would any other testimony. Of course, Psyche Locks, Perceiving, and Moon Matrix all come back, making this story another great mark in both Apollo and Phoenix's story. Sorry Athena, maybe next time. Since Shu Takumi couldn't help during the development of Dual Destinies due to returning too late to Capcom, they gave him an opportunity to make his own game where he wouldn't be subjected to everything he went through making Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. This is when he made The Great Ace Attorney, a game set in the 19th century Britain where Phoenix's ancestor, Ryunosuke Naruhodo, meets Sherlock Holmes and takes on the British court system. The first game released in 2015 in Japan on the 3DS in between Dual Destinies and Spirits of Justice, and the second game was released in 2017 after Spirits of Justice. Due to the use of Sherlock Holmes characters, the games weren't allowed to be brought to the West. Until 4 years later when both games were put into a collection on Nintendo Switch in 2021, and the necessary changes were made to bring the games over. I'll go into the story of this game in a bit more detail. Your best friend Kazuma Asogi takes up your defense of player character Ryunosuke Naruhodo. You're prompted to become your own defense attorney. During this case, you learn that Kazuma is about to go to Britain to study law and he decides to smuggle you on the steamboat, but tragedy strikes as he is killed one night. After solving the case with some help from Sherlock Holmes, who is just coincidentally on the same boat, you're able to take Kazuma's place. When you arrive in London, you take up a new case, move in with Mr. Holmes, and your new adventure in London begins. This gameplay is a refinement of the Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright gameplay. Full 3D models are used for the characters, and the investigations are mostly the same, except with one new gameplay mechanic. Throughout your investigation, Mr. Holmes will try to deduce the truth, but since he's high as a fucking kite every day, or should I say every day, using the full 3D plane you're given, Using the full 3D plane you're given, you can look around a crime scene to use your own evidence to correct its reasoning. Trials work a lot in the same way as Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright. You cross-examine multiple witnesses at once, listen to other witnesses to see if they can shed more light on the case, or use your evidence to contradict them. Since the game is set in Britain, the jury system is in place, and that became the basis for the new gameplay mechanic during the trials. When the jury declares the defendant guilty, the defense has the opportunity to present a closing argument. You hear each juror's reasons for why they're giving a guilty verdict, and then you pit 2 conflicting statements against each other. Your goal is to get a majority to switch from guilty to innocent. There's a very interesting insight into what Shu Takumi wanted to include in Professor Layton vs. Phoenix Wright, but couldn't, and show how you can make Ace Attorney more interesting through the evolution of the series, and the whole reason we had an evolution was actually because of Professor Layton versus Ace Attorney. And I think the perfect way to close off this video would be to show you a quote from Shu Takumi. It shows how he plans to take the series and it makes me more excited for it. I think level 5 offers me a good opportunity to think, well, maybe not changing directions, but they at least maybe consider, maybe I could go this way. If I hadn't gotten the opportunity to make this game, the style of Ace Attorney perhaps would have never changed. Okay guys, as usual, thank you so much for watching the video. This took so long to make, so very long. Please like and share it around. Check out my other videos. Come to the streams as well. I get lonely. Please come talk to me. With other stuff than that, leave suggestions down in the comments what you want me to do. I'm kind of running low on ideas, but thank you guys so much for coming and checking me out, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.